This lesson covers narrative writing, which is the writing unit you will be focusing on for the next little while. Your keywords are narrative, plot, exposition, climax, resolution, conflict, types of conflict, setting, world building, characters, round characters, flat characters, narration, point of view, third-person narrators, literary elements. You will notice as you go through this video, that there are bolded and underlined words. These words are vocabulary words that you will be responsible for on your vocabulary assignment, so you may well wish to pay attention. Narratives are stories. They can be fiction and made up, or they can be nonfiction, which are true. All stories have common traits, and they all share something or explore a side of human nature. All narratives have plot. This is all the actions, the events in a story from the start to the finish. The exposition is the start of the story that gives background information to the conflict and the events that are going to come. The climax is the turning point where the conflict is at its peak. The resolution is near the end, or the end of the story where the conflict is resolved. The actions of the story are all tied together by the conflict, which is the problem the character must face and overcome. There are a few different types of conflict, 5 to be specific, and they fit into 2 main categories. External conflicts, which happen outside of the character in the real world, well, the real world of the story. This includes man versus man, where the problem is between 2 people or 2 equal-sized groups. Man versus nature, where the problem is between the character and a force of nature. Man versus society, where the problem is between the character and a larger group or people in authority and traditions and customs of a culture, that kind of thing. And man versus technology, where the problem is between the character and an element of technology like a computer or a robot. We also have internal conflicts that take place inside the character's head, mentally or emotionally. This is man versus self, where the character is struggling with a belief or an emotion, a thought process. All stories have setting. This is the where and when a story takes place. It can be a real place, an actual place, and an actual time. It can be a fictionalized real place or real time with made-up elements added in, or a made-up place and time based on real locations and events. Or it can be completely made up. When authors make up their own worlds with their own rules and structures and cultures and customs, we call it world building. And all stories have characters. These are the people or people substitutes who populate a narrative's world. They come in 2 types. Round characters are fully developed, lifelike characters, like the people that you meet and you know. Flat characters are one-dimensional characters. They only have a single overwhelming character trait, and there's very little character growth where the character learns things and does things differently from the beginning to the end of the story. Whereas round characters, as they attack their conflict, will grow. They will become different people. Characters control the point of view of a story, which is the perspective from which a story is told. This is determined by the narrator. First person is told by a narrator in the story using I, me, my, so on and so forth. Second person makes the reader a character in the story using the pronoun you. And third person is the most common perspective. Uses he, she, it, they, and the characters' names to identify the characters in the story, and excludes the narrator as being part of the story. Narration is the act of telling a story. A narrator is the person who tells a story. This is determined by the point of view, so a story with a first-person point of view narrator is told in the first person. There are 2 types of third-person narrators. One is third-person limited. This only knows what the main character knows or says as this character discovers or reveals this information. And third-person omniscient, who knows everything about the story and all the characters in it, and reveals or hints at things as the story develops that this characters may not yet know themselves. So this narrator, knows things outside of what the characters know. We also have literary elements. which are the methods of craft and or figurative language that an author uses to make the story come alive and be interesting to the reader. We will have a different lesson on traits of good narrative writing that look at these a little bit more in depth, but all stories have them. Craft is the plot, structure, and sequencing expectations, writing style and voice, etc. that an author uses. And figurative language is, of course, the effects of word choice and symbolism, so on and so forth. This is your lesson on narrative writing. You should have an idea of what you're going to be doing in terms of writing stories here very, very soon. Make sure you hang on to these notes when you get them back. Once you are finished with the notes, please turn them into your appropriate class folder.